The rest of the workday dragged on at a glacial pace. Every keyboard click, every roll of packing tape, every quiet conversation in the break room felt amplified, as if the whole office was holding its breath. I sat at my desk, staring at the calendar reminder for Saturday's dinner, the bright blue notification burning on my monitor. I kept replaying Kai's ultimatum in my head, turning it over, searching for some loophole I might have missed. If I walked away, I would lose my steady salary, my health insurance, and the ability to chip away at the personal loan he had given my family. The debt was not legally enforceable in the way a formal contract would be, but the moral weight of it sat heavy in my chest all the same. A few of the remaining female co-workers shot me curious sideways glances. Word spread fast in open-plan offices. They had watched me get called into Kai's private office, right as the purge was unfolding, and they were already wondering why my desk was still intact, why I had not been handed an exit box like everyone else. Whispers drifted across the cubicle partition. I could feel their quiet suspicion. To them, it must look as though I had struck some secret deal to save myself while the rest of them got pushed out. There was no easy way to explain that my deal came in the form of a forced blind date with the CEO's brother. Late afternoon, Elowen wandered through the workspace. Dressed in a tailored cream blazer, she moved with easy, privileged confidence, pausing to exchange quick pleasantries with several male managers. Her gaze brushed over me, sharp and assessing. She never said a word, but I could feel her eyes linger. She must have heard from Kai that I was being lined up for Jasper. I had no way of knowing whether she approved of this work or whether she resented that I was escaping the fallout of her careless comment. I left the office at 6, my work bag slung over one shoulder. Seattle's gray autumn rain misted the parking lot, dotting the windshield of my old sedan. On the drive home to my small downtown apartment, I called my best friend. She picked up on the second, and I spilled the whole messy story. Hands tight around the steering wheel as stop-and-go traffic crawled along the highway. He is basically blackmailing you into dating his... Lila said, her tone tight with disbelief. Maren, you cannot let him do this. But I get it. That loan hangs over your family. It is not simple. She's right. Nothing was simple. I spent the rest of my Thursday and Friday torn between drafting backup versions of my May and staring at the dinner. Kai texted me twice, asking whether I had picked out something appropriate for Saturday. He sent over a link to a boutique clothing rent service, offering to cover the cost of a nurse, as if buying formal wear could make this transaction feel grim. I declined the offer. I was not going to let him outfit me like some gift for Jasper. Friday afternoon, Kai pulled me aside once more before... The office was emptier now. Half the female staff had already completed their departures. Cardboard boxes were stacked by the building exit, waiting to be... Just remember what I told you. Kai reminded me, his voice low. He does not play games. Do not go in expecting a light fun night. This matters, I bit a sharp retort. Saturday rolled around quickly. I spent the afternoon in my apartment, going through my closet. I settled on a dark green midi dress, something professional but soft. My stomach twisted into knots. Part of me wanted to drive in the opposite direction, to vanish and let the termination notice land. But I thought of my mother's lingering medical bills, of the credit card balances I was slowly paying down. I could not afford to throw everything. I got in my car as dusk painted the Seattle sky. Rain fell steadily, streaking across the windows as I navigated downtown streets toward the upscale restaurant. Valet attendants hurried through the up. I handed over my keys, stood at the restaurant's awning, and peered through the large windows. Inside, warm golden light spilled over lintels. And there he was. Jasper Voss sat near the far wall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, wearing a welted charcoal suit. Scrolling his phone, he simply sat, hands folded on the tabletop, resting on the window, watching the rain fall. He carried that quiet, unshakable scribed. Cold, formidable, impossible to ignore. My breath caught. There was no turning back now. Boxes stacked against every wall of the open concept office, cardboard flaps flapping every time someone hurried past. It was surreal how fast everything had unraveled, all stemming from one throwaway comment made by Kai Voss's fiancée during a Friday afternoon visit. Elowen had made an offhand remark about the number of women on Kai's senior support team, and somehow that single sentence had snowballed into a quiet purge. Women across departments were being handed exit packets, clearing out their desks one by one. I watched co-workers I had eaten lunch with for years haul personal mugs and framed photos toward the elevators, their faces tight with shock and hurt. I was Maren Hale, Kai's senior executive assistant. For 2 years I had kept his chaotic schedule held together, smoothed over client conflicts, and covered for him through more crises than I could count. More than that, I owed him. When my mother's medical bills had crushed my family 2 years back, Kai had stepped in with a personal loan, bailing us out when no one else would. That debt hung over me, soft and heavy, the kind of favor you never truly stop feeling. I had assumed that history would shield me from what was unfolding around me, but as HR notifications popped up on other women's work laptops, I could not shake the cold twist in my stomach. I did not know how much protection that favor would actually buy. Late in the afternoon, Kai pulled me into his glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind us. Outside, the hum of packing tape and quiet, frustrated voices filtered through the thin glass. He leaned against the edge of his oak desk, jaw tight, exhaustion etched into his features. He hated the mess Alohan's comment had created, yet he was unwilling to push back against his fiancée directly. "Maren, you know I would never want to lose you," he began, his voice lowered. "You are the only person in this building I fully trust, but the environment right now is toxic. Retention for female staff is collapsing, and I cannot keep making exceptions for one person when everyone else is being pushed." My chest tightened. So even I was not safe. I folded my arms, keeping my expression neutral, though my pulse had picked up speed. "Are you telling me my position is being eliminated?" "Not exactly," he said. Then he paused, like he was carefully weighing every word before he spoke it out loud. "I have an alternative. My older brother, Jasper. I arranged a blind date for..." I asked him, certain I hadn't heard. "A date? Kai, that is not a work solution. He is the heir for our family's enterprise," he pushed on, ignoring my action. "Jasper. He comes off as ice-cold to most people, but he is frighteningly capable. Fiercely loyal to the people he cares about, and impossible to brush aside once he sets his sights." His tone turned sharp, almost warning. "You will either hate him or everything will shift for you. If there is a connection between you, your position is secure. More than secure, you would be tied to my family. One. Not even Elohan would touch." Sat there, absorbing what he was really proposing. My employment, my livelihood was being traded off as potential romantic currency. The loan I owed hung unspoken in the between us. He had saved my family once, and now he expected me to play along with this high-stakes setup. It was a request. It was a bargain, wrapped in the language of gratitude. "I never signed up to date your brother at my job," I told him. My voice thin. "I knew it was unfair," I admitted, and for a second I believed he meant it. "But right now this is the only pack I can offer you. Turn it down, and you will be included in the rest of the separations. I cannot fight company momentum for you alone." There it was. The ultimatum laid bare in polite phrasing. Say no, and I lost my income, my career, and still carried the weight of that unpaid personal loan hanging over my head. Say yes, and I walked into a blind date with one of the most powerful men in the state, performing for the benefit of my... I left his office in a daze and asked. Around me, more women carried boxes toward the lobby. My inbox pinged a moment later. A calendar alert onto my screen. Dinner reservation at a high-end downtown Seattle restaurant for Saturday evening. Reservation under my name, set by Kai's admin. My phone lit up with information text. The restaurant's fancy logo glowing screen. I sat words. I could delete the alert, ignore the text, refuse to show up, but I could already see the consequence playing out. Termination paperwork. Financial pressure crashing back onto my family. The choice was not really a choice at all. Somewhere deep inside, I wondered what it would be like for Voss. Would I hate him, warned? Or would something far more complicated take root before the night was over? A hostess greeted me at the door with a polished smile and led me across the dining room floor. Soft jazz hummed from hidden speakers, and the clink of wine glasses wrapped around every quiet conversation. Every table held well-dressed patrons, most of them deep in low-voiced talks about business and social events. My shoes clicked softly against polished hardwood as I walked toward Jasper's table. He stood when I drew near. He was even taller up close, his dark eyes steady as they met mine. There was no warm smile, no performative charm meant to put me at ease, just a calm, assessing glance, like he was cataloging every detail of my demeanor. "Maren Hale," he said, his voice low and even. It was not a question. He already knew my name. "That's me," I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. My fingers folded tight in my lap beneath the table. A server appeared to pour water and drop off wine menus. Jasper waved off the alcohol list without a second glance. "I don't drink during business meetings." The words landed sharp. My eyebrows lifted. "Is this a business meeting?" "Kai framed it as a blind date," he answered flat. "But I know my brother. This is damage control for his office. I didn't ask to be set up with." All the tension I had carried over the past 2 days loosened, just a... At least he was not pretending this was some romantic serendipity. Most men in his position would put on a polite show, hiding the mechanics behind the eating. Jasper cut straight through the I didn't ask for this, I told him honestly. If I walk away tonight, I lose my job. That is the bargain Kai laid out. He leaned back in his chair, studying my face. He told me you owe him a personal loan for family medical costs. He made it sound like you are drowning in debt with nowhere else. I hesitated. That was not entirely. But Kai had definitely stretched the severity of it. My payments were steady. I was behind nothing. The burden real, but not catastrophic, the way Kai had painted it to justify. Without job, keeping up the payments becomes nearly impossible. I ceded. But I am not destitute. Kai makes it sound far more desperate. Jasper's jaw tightened faintly. He could read between. His younger brother had exaggerated my hardship to pressure both of us into. The server returned to take ours. We both picked simple dishes, neither of us interested in lingering over fancy courses. For a stretch after the left, we sat in silence, listening to the restaurant hum. You are caught in the fallout from allowance care comment, he said at last. Kai won't stand up to his fiancée, so he dumps his problem to me. That's classic Kai. Pass the hard choice to someone else. I blinked. I had expected him to his family. Instead, he saw right through Kai's poor thinking. Would you have come if he hadn't pushed this? Asked. No, Jasper said with hesitation. I don't care for arranged pairings designed to fix worries. I have enough on my plate running the family holdings. I don't need to add a transactional relation schedule. The food arrived. We ate slowly, our conversation shifting away from the forced setup. He asked about my background, not in a cautious way, but to understand who I was beyond Kai's description. I talked about working my way up to executive assistant, of mother's illness, about how much I cared about my work. I learned he spent most of his time managing real estate and venture portfolios, constantly mediating conflicts within his sprawling. Beneath cold exterior, he carried his own weight. Dinner without sparks, without romantic tenderness. He had spoken plainly, respect others' position, but nothing magical had ignited. When the check arrived, Jasper reached for it. This is on me, he said, not as a date gesture, as a courtesy for being dragged there's mess. We stepped out under the restaurant awning as valets fetched our cars. Fine mist still hung the Seattle night air, streetlights off wet pavement. He pulled a matte black business card from his suit pocket, and me. I don't want to pretend this is something it was, he said, but Kai's going to drop this easily. He will keep pressing you for updates. Find yourself cornered, or if he crosses a line you cannot bear, call this number, directly. Don't go through his office. I took the card, my fingers brushed stock. We will see each other again, he added. It was not a flirtatious promise. It was a quiet warning. Kai would not let this sit away on its own. His car pulled up. He gave one short reserved and climbed into the back seat. The vehicle pulled off into downtown traffic. I stood there holding his business card, reins of my hair. The dinner was over, but I knew this whole deal was far from finished. I slept poorly that night, Jasper's text looping through my mind every time I woke. Kai would push harder. The warning hung over me like a storm cloud. Tuesday at work, he kept me buried under an avalanche of urgent administrative tasks, filling my calendar with back-to-back meetings so I barely had time to glance at my personal phone. It felt like quiet retaliation, keeping me too busy to talk to Jasper behind his back. By mid-afternoon, I burned out. My hands shook slightly as I finished drafting client contracts. I sent Kai a short calendar request, asking to leave an hour early to handle personal business. To my surprise, he approved it right away. I grabbed my bag and drove across the city to a neutral downtown coffee shop, the same location Jasper had suggested over text. It was bright, busy, full of remote workers, and far away from anyone connected to the office. Jasper was already seated in a corner booth when I walked in. He had shed his formal suit for a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled halfway up his forearm. A leather-bound notebook lay open on the table in front of him. He gestured for me to sit across from him. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice lowered over the hum of espresso machines and distant chatter. I wanted to talk away from Kai's orb. I set my purse beside the booth and leaned forward. "What exactly are you looking for?" "Clarity on that loan," he said plainly. Kai described it as a massive, crushing burden that leaves you completely at his mercy. I pulled the basic transaction record from family files. It was a substantial sum, but not the life-ruining debt he paid. My breath caught. I had never seen the full record laid out in black and white. Kai had framed the loan as an overwhelming life, and I had carried that weight for 2 years. But according to Jasper's documentation, I had already paid back nearly 60% of the principal plus agreed-upon interest. Only a smaller remainder was left outstanding. Kai had never corrected that portion. He had let me believe I owed him far more than I actually. A sharp, bitter feeling settled in my. All the compromises I had made, all the times I bit my tongue at work, the blind date, built partly on a distorted sense of obligation. I never realized how much I had already. I said. I kept making every month payment, but I trusted him to keep track of where. Kai thrives on moral leverage. He does not lie outright. He just omits facts that weaken his position. He uses that exaggerated sense of debt to make people comply with. I stared down at the surface of the table, processing the shift. For years I had structured my choices around this enormous perceived obligation. Now I understand. The financial burden real, but the moral hold Kai wielded over me was. That did not erase what he had done to my mother, but it stripped away the excuse for forcing me into this family. He still holds my job in my head, I reminded him. Even if the loan balance is smaller, he can still make me. Washington is at will employment. He does not need a reason. I know. Jasper nodded. I cannot force him to be employed. Family influence only goes so far when he is determined to dig in his heels. But you are no longer required to sacrifice your personal life to settle a debt that is mostly already paid. We talked for another hour. I told him about the office atmosphere after the purge, about the quiet fear hanging over the remaining staff, about Elowen's uneasy presence. Jasper jotted down his book, careful not to press me into becoming an official. He made it clear I got to choose how much. When I checked my work before leaving, there were 3 missed calls from Kai, plus a string of increasingly sharp. He had noticed my early exit and saw I was not in. My stomach tightened. He had figured out I was meeting site. I left the coffee. Twilight was the city. I drove back to the office building, knowing I was walking straight in. Every mile brought me closer to the fight I could no longer avoid. Kai would be furious that I had learned the truth about the loan. Whatever trust had remained between us was about to shatter completely. Monday morning rolled around, and I walked back into an office that felt hollowed out. Half the desk sat empty, personal items stripped away, only faint dust outlines marking where monitors and keyboards used to sit. The hum of normal office life was gone. Low, tense conversations rippled between the remaining staff, everyone careful what they said out loud. Every female employee who still held a job moved cautiously, aware they could be next on the chopping block. I settled at my desk, Jasper's business card tucked deep inside my wallet. I kept it hidden, not wanting anyone to spot it and spin more rumors. Within 10 minutes, Kai appeared beside my workstation, leaning down so only I could hear him. How did Saturday night go? He asked, eyes sharp with expectation. Did you connect with him? There was no connection, I answered flatly, keeping my voice low. We talked honestly about the fact this whole thing was forced on both of us. Kai's expression fell. Frustration flickered across his face. Maren, you cannot shut it down before it even starts. Jasper does not open up quickly. You need to give it more time. I cannot manufacture chemistry for your family's convenience, I said. My pulse quickened. For the first time, I was pushing back against him openly in the open office. He stepped back, recognizing I would not cave to gentle pressure and walked toward his glass corner office without another word. By mid-morning, Elowen wandered onto the main floor. She paused by my desk, her gaze drifting over my screen, searching for any hint of contact with Jasper. I heard you had dinner with Jasper, she said, her tone light but edged. That is quite the unexpected turn of events. It was a setup Kai arranged, I replied, keeping my tone. I had very little say. Her lips pressed into a thin. She did not respond, simply turned and walked. It was clear she distrusted my position. She worried I might gain foothold inside the Voss family. A woman who had survived the office purge she had accidentally. Word spread fast, and several female co-workers shot me guarded, suspicious glances throughout the day. They saw me untouched by the layoffs and assumed I was chasing Voss family status. No one knew the full weight of the ultimatum hanging. Late that afternoon, my phone buzzed inside my desk. It was an unknown number. I ducked into the quiet stairwell, out of sight of security cameras and wandering cookers, before. Maren Hale, this is. His voice came through the speaker, calm, steady. This is not a call. I have been going over some internal company filings Kai sent over for the family enterprise review. Several of the terminations from last week raised serious flags. My heart skipped. What kind of flags? Document is sloppy. HR cut corners rushing people out the door. A number of those women could have legitimate grounds for wrongful terminating claims, he explained. I am not calling to review your job. I just want to understand how far Kai is willing to bend policy to keep. I leaned against the cold concrete stairwell wall. This was the opening I had not dared hope for. but it also pulled me deeper into Voss family conflict. If Kai learned I was sharing office context with Jasper behind his back, the consequence... Kai still believes he is doing what he has to do, I told him. He thinks he is protecting his engagement is the truth. Jasper, I do not need you to act as a spy, but if you witness anything further that crosses clear employment lines, you can... We ended the call, and I stepped back into the hallway. No one had seen me, but as I returned to my desk, I spotted Kai standing away. He had not heard the conversation, but he had noticed me slipping into the stairwell with my foot. His brow lifted suspicion. That evening, after most employees had left, he summoned me once more. The blinds were half drawn, casting long shadows in the room. "Were you speaking to Jasper just now?" he asked, straight to the point. I paused, weighed carefully. Lying would only make things worse. Found out later. He reached out to me, I admitted. Not for dating. He is reviewing company materials for the Voss family portfolio. He has questions about Week's departures. Kai's jaw tightened. He had wanted Jasper to court me, not to dig into the messy false purge. The dynamic thing out of his control. He had imagined this blind date would lock everything neatly into place. Instead, his older brother was investigating choices. Be careful what information you share with him, Kai warned me sharply. Remember who helped your family once to turn. The old debt in the air again, weaponized as a reminder of where my looks to lie. I walked out of his office, critical truth. I could no longer trust Kai's interest. Whatever leverage I had now came from Jasper's quiet scrutiny, not from the boss who I respect. On my drive home, up once again. It was Jasper, a short driving on my screen. I will push harder now. Be mindful of how he pressures you. I stared at the message, realizing that it was only just beginning. The parking garage lights cast cold, pale streaks across my windshield as I pulled into the company lot. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Kai's text messages burned on my screen, each one sharper than the last. He knew I had met Jasper and he was furious. I sat in the car for several long minutes, trying to steady my breathing before I stepped out. Most employees had gone home, and the office floors would be quiet, leaving nowhere for me to hide from this confrontation. I walked through the empty lobby and took the elevator up. The open-plan workspace was dim, only a handful of overhead lights still on. Kai's corner office glowed, blinds half drawn, and I could see his silhouette pacing behind the glass. He spotted me the second I stepped into view, and he waved me inside without waiting for me to knock. I pushed the office door shut behind me, sealing us away from the rest of the floor. Kai leaned against his desk, jaw set, frustration radiating off him. You met Jasper this afternoon. You left work early to go behind my back. I didn't go behind your back to plot against you, I replied, keeping my voice even. He wanted to go over the details of the loan you gave my family. Something flickered across his face. Alarm. He understood exactly what Jasper had shown me. That was a private matter between you and me. It was a tool you used to pressure me into a blind date I never wanted. I shot back. I've already paid back nearly 60% of that principal plus interest. You never told me how much progress I had made. You let me believe I was drowning in permanent debt. Kai's expression hardened. He did not deny. Instead, he leaned forward, falling back on the memory of my mother's medical crisis. I stepped in when every bank turned you away. And your family would have collapsed without that money. Does partial repayment erase what I did you? Of course I am grateful, I said, my throat. Gratitude does not mean I owe you my dating. It does not mean I let you trade me to your brother to clean up the mess from Elowen's. You are being ungrateful, he said flatly. I gave you safety. This arrangement was supposed to keep you safe. Safety built on a bargain where my personal life is the currency is not real. The argument hung heavy in the closed room. I could feel how far apart we had drifted. Once I had respected him, trusted his judgment. Now I saw how easily he twisted kindness into leverage. He would not accept my perspective. To him, my pushback felt like... Before our conversation ended, I heard soft footsteps outside the... Elowen had come back to the office, and she had paused just out of... She could not hear every word, but fragments of our raised exchange drifted through the thin barrier. She lingered for a moment and then walked. I realized she had overheard enough to know our working relationship was fractured. I left Kai's office soon after, too drained viewing. I went straight home, locked my apartment door behind me, and sank on my couch. Guilt warred with anger inside me. Some small part of me still felt bad for pushing against the man who had... But the larger part knew I could not keep surrendering. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up I updated every section, polished my references, and started browsing job postings across the tech market. If Kai made good on his threat to fire me, I needed. I could not rely on Jasper or the Voss family to rescue my career. My escape had to come. I sent out 2 careful applications. It felt risky. If Kai discovered I was actively interviewing elsewhere, termination would follow immediately. But staying passive would. My phone pinged late, a new text message number. It was Elowen. Short, direct, no pleasantries. Can we meet tonight? No, Kai. To talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. Elowen was Kai's fiancée, the person whose offhand remark had ignited the whole office purge. What could she possibly want from me? Meeting a great obvious risk. But turning her down might close off whatever small window of understanding this could be. I typed back one simple reply, where? The next afternoon, I drove to a quiet neighborhood cafe tucked away from downtown's busy corridors. It was the kind of spot favored by remote workers, with soft background music and high-backed booths that kept conversations private. Elowen was already seated in the farthest corner, a half-empty herbal tea sitting in front of her. She had traded her sharp office blazer for a simple knit sweater, stripped of the polished power she carried around company headquarters. I slid into the booth across from her, setting my bag firmly beside my feet. I kept my guard up, ready for manipulation or veiled threats. Instead, her first words caught me off guard. I never meant for all those women to lose their jobs, she said, voice low and heavy. I made a throwaway comment about team dynamics the day I visited. I had no idea it would snowball into mass terminations. Kai turned a careless observation into an HR purge, and he never checked in with me before he set it in motion. I tilted my head, studying her. It was easy to paint her as the villain behind everything, but she sounded genuinely worn down. She explained that Kai had wanted to defuse her quiet unease about his female-heavy support staff, and he had overcorrected drastically without consulting her. By the time she realized what was happening, dozens of exit packets had already been handed out. She was trapped, unwilling to publicly contradict her fiancé and blow up their upcoming engagement. He thought cleaning house would keep the peace between us, Elowen continued. Then he cooked up this blind date scheme with Jasper for you, as some sort of band-aid fix. I found out about it after he'd already spoken to you. I hated it, but I didn't know how to push back without starting a huge fight with her. Honesty did not erase the damage that had been done, but it rewrote parts of the story I had accepted as fact. She was not pulling strings from the shadows. She was another person caught off guard by Kai's impulsive problem-solving style. Why are you telling me this? I asked. What do you want from her? I want the madness to stop, she answered. Kai believes he is protecting everyone, but he keeps making everything worse. I cannot keep watching him destroy careers to preserve our relationship. I am not on Kai's side in this, but I cannot openly oppose, not while our wedding plans hang over. We talked for nearly an hour. She shared small internal details about Kai's recent moods, his fear of conflict, and how he leaned on family status to patch over self-inflicted. I did not hand over confidential company documents, but I told her about the inflated loan leverage Kai had used against. She looked horrified when, by the time it started, a fragile, uneasy truce existed. She would warn me if Kai was planning sudden moves to me, and I would keep our conversations strictly confidential. When I got home, I updated my resume tracker and sent out 3 more job applications. I researched local employment lawyers online, reading through free resource articles about Washington at rules, understanding what protections I realistically had. I built small practical safety nets piece by piece, without relying on Jasper's influence or Elowen's goodwill. I knew both of those alliances could dissolve. 2 days later, disaster. Kai gained access to my work laptop late one evening. IT had flagged multiple external resume-related websites visited from my logged profile. He saw exactly what. The following morning, he summoned me into his office before the workday even officially. The sky outside was still pale gray with dawn light. His was cold, stripped of every trace of formality. My secret job search was no secret. You have been applying to other positions back, he said flatly. There was no anger, just quiet, resolve. I offered you safety in my circle, and you are already. I have every right to other work, countered. You have held termination over my head since this began. Why would I not prepare for the worst-case outcome? Kai leaned forward to his desk. Stop sending applications. Commit to seeing Jasper seriously, or you collect severance today. That is my final offer. Stomach sank. The ultimatum no longer subtle. Play the Roman game, he demanded. Walk out unemployed. The fragile truce with Elowen, the quiet Jasper. None of it shielded me from his direct authority and company. I left his office in silence. Back at my desk, I pulled out my phone. Elowen had messaged me earlier a short heads up, warning me Kai was furious about something. She had not exactly what, but she mood shift. Stood. I texted Jasper, keeping it brief, careful not evidence. Kai ultimatum. Date him seriously or termination. Minutes ticked by, and his reply landed. Just a clear line. I am handling this. Do not make any decisions alone. The screen. The fight was no longer about a bad blind date. It was about whether Kai could use employment power to force people to bend to his will. The final showdown was drawing near. The weight of Kai's ultimatum hung over every hour of my workday. Every email I sent, every meeting I sat through felt like borrowed time. I moved through my tasks mechanically, my mind stuck looping over the two terrible choices laid before me. Commit to a performant romance with Jasper, or pack my desk and walk into unemployment. Elowen slipped me a quick text mid-morning. Kai is arranging attendance for you at the Voss family gala this weekend. He intends to use the event to lock the narrative in front of the whole family. My blood ran cold. The gala was the annual high-profile Voss Enterprise gathering, where every branch of the wealthy family gathered alongside business partners and investors. Kai planned to parade me there as Jasper's potential partner. Once that impression took root among relatives, backing away would become infinitely harder. I texted Jasper immediately. He responded within minutes. Kai has been pushing for your invitation behind my back. I already know about the gala. I have no intention of playing his script for the crowd. Still, showing up might be our only real chance to dismantle this arrangement in front of witnesses. His message left me conflicted. Attending meant stepping onto a high-stakes public stage where every gesture would be interpreted through the family's lens. If I went, I risked being publicly framed as Jasper's love interest. If I stayed home, Kai would treat it as defiance and fire me before money. There was no safe middle ground. That afternoon, Kai found me by the copy machine. The office was quiet, most staff buried in end-of-week deadline. He handed over a printed gala invitation, heavy cream cardstock embossed with the Voss family crest. Saturday, head, voice low and unyielding. This is your... Show the family you and Jasper are building something. Meet their expectations, and your job stays secure. And there is nothing more I can do. I'm not a prop for your family. Kai. Then accept the consequences, he answered flatly, and walked away without another. After work, Elowen called me from her car, away from Kai's hearing. She said she still planned to attend the gala as Kai's fee, but she was growing increasingly disturbed by how far he was willing. She told me she would not publicly stand with him during the evening, though she could not openly break. She would keep her distance. Over the next 2 days, I refined my portfolio of professional accomplishments, saved copies of performance reviews, and backed up all my important personal files onto an extra. I did not want Kai to be able to erase proof of my years of hard work if he chose to terminate me. I bought a simple deep blue formal dress, nothing, something that let me hold on to my own identity amid all the... Saturday evening arrived. I pulled up outside the sprawling Voss family estate in Norwell. String lights glowed across manicured lawns, valets lined the circular driveway, and floodlights lit up the grand... Limousines kept rolling in, unloading wealthy guests in tailored gowns and designer suits. My ordinary sedan stuck out painfully among the vehicles. I stepped out onto the gravel drive. Jasper found me almost immediately in Vince Hall. He wore a black tailored tuxedo, his expression. You still have the option to turn around and drive away, he said quietly. I can cover the remaining balance alone tonight, separate from any personal concerns. You could avoid walking into this early. The offer stunned me. He could wipe away that final financial barrier in one scene. Shook my head. Running would let Kai keep his version intact. He would paint me as ungrateful, someone who fled rather than seized the opportunity he had handed me. All the women pushed out in the office purge would remain without visible vindication. I needed to face this inside, in front of the family who held so much Kai. I am not running, I told him. I need the people who truth. Jasper gave me a shod. Then stick close. When the moment comes, speak plain like you. We walked side by side through the massive front doors. Music and laughter washed over us. Every pair of eyes in the grand foyer drifted toward us. Wisp rippled through the crowd. Exactly as Kai had hoped, everyone assumed we had arrived as a romantic couple. Across the room I spotted Kai. He lifted his glass to triumph. Ella stood a few feet from him, her face neutral, refusing to satisfaction. The field was set. Everything would be decided before this night ended. The drive home from the gala stretched long under Seattle's dark, rain-streaked skies. I kept my speed steady, processing everything that had unfolded inside that gilded ballroom. Relief tangled with raw anxiety. I had broken free from Kai's manipulative bargain, yet I woke Sunday morning with no job, uncertain income, and the leftover balance of the personal loan still waiting to be settled. News of the gala spread quickly through professional circles by Monday. Kai's company faced internal fallout. Several former female employees who had been pushed out reached out to HR, raising formal complaints about the hasty, poorly documented terminations. Within days, Kai's board pushed him to implement broad policy reviews. He did not reach out to me. There were no angry calls, no attempts to negotiate. Our working relationship was finished for good. Elowen and Kai also called off their engagement. The damage from his repeated poor choices could not be papered over. Even for a family-backed couple, I kept sending out job applications, interviewing for executive assistant and operations roles across the city. Some hiring managers had heard whispers of the gala incident. A few doors closed but others respected that I had stood up to unfair pressure, and those interviews moved forward. One crisp Tuesday afternoon, Jasper sent me a short message, asking to meet at the waterfront park overlooking Puget's. No fancy restaurants, no family observer, no hidden agenda, just the two of us. I arrived at the park as golden late autumn sunlight spilled over the wind stirred through the evergreen trees lining the door. Jasper was leaning against a wooden railing, dressed in casual clothes, far removed from the tuxedo and boardroom suits I had seen him wear. There was no family audience, no business crisis hanging over the... I took care of the remaining balance on loan, the moment I stepped close. Not as bargain. Not to buy anything from you. Kai twisted that debt into a weapon against you, and I wanted to remove that last weight. There are no strings attached. I caught. You didn't have to do that, I know. He said. But you deserve to move forward without that ghost hanging over your... We walked slowly along the gravel path. We talked about the chaos of the weeks, about Kai's tendency to pass hard problems on others, about how easy gratitude can twist into obligation. We also talked about ordinary things, books, the frustrating rhythm of Seattle commutes, the work that filled our sets. There was no urgent pressure to define what we were to each other, no family demanding a match, no job hanging. I am not looking to jump straight into a relationship, Jasper told me honestly. Everything between us started chaos. I would rather we take this slow if at all. I smiled. For the first time since Elowen's careless comment ignited the office purge before, my shoulders felt full. I did not need to run anything. My worth was no longer measured by job title or by how useful I was. A week later, I accepted a senior operations position at a mid-sized nonprofit. Pay was solid, the management team prioritized fair wage culture, and I earned every bit of it through my own resume and interviews. No family connection. Months I built steady routines in my new role. Jasper and I saw casually. Coffee dates, long walks, quiet dinners, unfolding days. Romance bloomed gently, enforced, built on mutual respect rather than debt. It was not a sweeping fairy tale happy ending. There were still hard days, emotional hurdles, old wounds that soften. I sometimes thought back to those terrible afternoons in the old office, watching women stack cardboard boxes beside their desks. I had once believed gratitude meant boundaries. Now I understood. Kindness deserved thanks, but it never required me to give me. I had escaped the transaction they'd to lock me into, and I had finally built a life that was my own. Crystal chandeliers hung high above the grand ballroom, casting warm golden light over hundreds of guests. Soft orchestral music filled the air, mixing with the low murmur of business conversations. Jasper stayed close beside me as we moved through the crowd, heads turned our way wherever we went. Relatives and business associates smiled, offering congratulations, already buying Kai's manufactured love story narrative. Each polite well-wish felt like another thin chain locking me into a lie. Kai worked his way through the gathering and found us within 20 minutes. Elowen trailed a half-step behind him, her expression guarded, keeping her remarks brief whenever someone praised the supposed match he had arranged. Everyone is talking about you two, Kai said, lifting his wine glass. There was quiet victory in his tone. This is exactly how it should go. Before I could reply, an older senior member of the Voss family stepped over, curious to meet the woman Kai had touted to the whole clan. That was my opening. The small circle around us swelled, more relatives and business partners drifting over to see what drew the attention. All eyes settled on me. I took a slow breath. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice stayed steady enough to carry to the group. Do not mistake this evening for a romantic beginning, I said clearly. A hush fell over our little cluster. I am Kai's former executive secretary. Every female member of my team was forced out of the office after one offhand comment from his fiancée. My job was held hostage. Kai told me I could keep my position only if I agreed to this blind date with Jasper. Shock rippled across the faces surrounding us. Murmurs broke. Kai's smile dropped. He stepped forward, trying to cut me. Maren, that is out of context. There is no kinder context. I pressed on, not letting him seize back control of the moment. 2 years ago, Kai lent my family money for urgent medicals. I have paid back most of that, yet he kept the full weight of that favor hanging over me. He used my gratitude as leverage to trade my personal life for workplace stability. Jasper and I are not falling in love. We were both dragged into this mess against. The room hummed with quiet astonishment. Several family members shot sharp, disappointed glances. Jasper shifted, positioning himself partially beside me, making it clear he backed every word I. My brother treated a family business connection as a solution for his own managerial. Jasper's deep voice cut through noise. I never consented to be a bargaining chip to save one employee's job, nor to cover up a poorly handled office purge. This was never my arrangement. Kai's face flushed. All his carefully constructed public image crumbled in front of relatives and investors. Elowen stood silent, no longer attempting to defend him. She simply gave a small, sad head. She would not carry the blame for his choice. Kai, you should have addressed office problem through HR, not family-making. One elderly Voss patriarch said firmly. This reflects terribly on eyes. Humiliation wore Kai. He could not argue against two separate witnesses confirming this. He spun on his heel and walked from the circle, shouldering through the crowd toward the mansion. Elowen hesitated for a moment, then after him, leaving me standing amid the Jasper, you did not have to lay it. I could not let everyone keep believing the lie, I told him. If I stayed quiet tonight, this transaction would. The gala could not go back to its polished zone. Whispers spread outward from our cluster across the whole ballroom. Guests stole glances in my direction there. I had dismantled Kai's scheme, but I also knew what came next. There was no going back to my old secretary job. I had publicly embarrassed. That chapter of my career was well closed. I excused myself from the getter. I did not advise. I walked out the grand front door in the cool night air. Valet attendants fed my ordinary sedan, flipped behind the wheel, leaving the glittering mansion and all the Voss behind me. I pulled onto the highway headle. My hands still shook. My freedom. But the future stretched ahead blank. I had no job, only a handful of pending job applications, and the remainder of that old loan still hanging chances. And Jasper? I had no idea whether what we shared would amount to anything, or if our fragile alliance would dissolve once the faded away.